Most interesting facts about HIV/AIDS. It's difficult to accept that HIV/AIDS has just been perceived for around 30 years. In that time, the plague has gone from a generally obscure illness to an overall well-being emergency and asserted in excess of 30 million lives. In spite of progress, AIDS keeps on executing around 8,000 Americans every year. Somewhere else on the planet, especially sub-Saharan Africa, the circumstance is unmistakably more critical, with over 15% of the populace tainted with AIDS in certain countries. Coming up next are a portion of the additionally intriguing realities about this worldwide pandemic. Number 1. Where it came from. There are two strains of HIV, HIV-1, which has been followed back to chimpanzees, and HIV-2, which came from a little African monkey. Inside those strains, there are likewise a few substrains. By a long shot, the most destructive adaptation is HIV-1. Definitely when HIV-1 took the jump toward people may never be known. Most researchers concur that it was in the blink of an eye before 1931 and likely an outcome of the ancestral preference for chimp or bushmeat. Infections are not alive in the customary sense, and they regularly challenge our comprehension of how creatures act and develop. It is accepted that the soonest strains of HIV detained people were milder and at times halted by the invulnerable framework. Throughout the long term, the infection became hardier, changed, and recombined. By the mid-80s, the point at which it was first recognized, it had for all intents and purposes become a capital punishment. Number 2. Earliest cases. The soonest affirmed instance of AIDS in people comes from Kinshasa, the capital of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. It was distinguished from a protected tissue test from 1959. The sickness had hopped the Atlantic by the following decade. The main known American, a Missouri young person named Robert Rayford, passed on of AIDS in 1969. Specialists trust Rayford was likely a male whore. By 1977, AIDS had started taking carries on within Europe. Norwegian mariner Arvid Noe was the main known casualty. There is some proof that AIDS got out and about in Europe following World War II, predicated on a rush of kids passing on from PCP, an illness which just besets those with debilitated safe frameworks. Its quality is right around a definite sign that the patient has AIDS. A Dutch specialist followed the pandemic to the Baltic port city of Danzig, at that point thought that it was spread all through the mainland. It is accepted that the sickness spread by the then generally regular act of reusing needles. Shockingly, around only 33% of the youngsters passed on, recommending the infection they contracted had not yet changed into the completely deadly form we perceive today. Number 3. Patient 0. French-Canadian Airlines steward Gaëtan Dugas is every now and again attacked as the Typhoid Mary, or Patient 0 of AIDS in America. This is a dubious position since Dugas was unquestionably not the principal individual to be tainted with AIDS, or even the primary North America. The principal realized American was a young person from Missouri, and capitulated in 1969. It is, nonetheless, entirely conceivable that Dugas' indiscrimination made the illness become broad. A large number of the early cases analyzed in the United States were in the end straightforwardly followed back to Dugas. His vocation as an airline steward permitted him to move effectively between significant urban communities, and his propensity for frequenting gay bathhouses put him in contact with many other men, who thus probably engaged a few accomplices. This prompted a remarkable spread of the sickness, which happened all through the 1980s. Gaëtan Dugas himself kicked the bucket in 1984 from kidney disappointment brought about by the disease. If you like what you're watching, please like, share the video and subscribe to the channel. Number 4. Intentional infection. Organic fighting has been known since old occasions, trespassers throwing plague carcasses over bulwark divider and cover saturated with smallpox virions, among different strategies. Perhaps it shouldn't astonish us that HIV/AIDS is once in a while utilized as a weapon, however actually as yet chilling. In the South African jail framework, the Feared Numbers gang utilizes assault by AIDS-contaminated prisoners as discipline. The casualty is sliced to guarantee transmission in a sickening cycle they call the moderate cut. Different cases, for example, New York's Nushawn Williams, are directly in arteries. Williams had intercourse with handfuls, maybe even several ladies, in the wake of learning he was HIV positive. He tainted at any rate 14 ladies, and 2 of his kids were brought into the world with the infection, however the real number might be far higher. Despite the fact that Williams' jail sentence was up in 2010, the state has kept him and the slammer as a peril to society, A preliminary is at present endeavoring to condemn him to uncertain imprisonment. Number 5. Hemogoblin. Few out of every odd hero resounds with crowds. For each Batman or Wolverine, there is an Aquaman. However, exactly what the innovative group that divulged Hemogoblin was believing is inconceivable. Highlighted in the DC comic The New Guardians in 1988, when the comprehension of AIDS was in its earliest stages, Hemogoblin was a HIV-positive vampire utilized by a racial oppressor gathering to taint minorities with the infection. He figures out how to send HIV to the questionably gay superhuman Extraño prior to biting the dust of AIDS himself, tolerantly inside a solitary issue of the comic.